Hello and welcome to the latest installment of the Rural Minds webinar series. I'm Julie Lux, Vice President of Communications at Rural Minds, and this program, like all of ours, are brought to you by Rural Minds and our good partners at the National Grange. So we have a very fascinating but a very serious subject to discuss this afternoon. We're going to be talking about alcohol use disorder among women in rural America. And we have two fascinating guests here to share their stories and their expertise with us. But first, as we begin all of our webinars, we want to remind you that the only names and faces you will be seeing on the screen this afternoon are those of us who are participating in the webinar. We know that the material that we discuss is frequently very sensitive, and your anonymity and the confidentiality of our audience members is very important to us. So no one's name or likeness will be seen on the screen. However, that does not mean that we don't want you to participate, because we would welcome questions as we're going through the presentations. Please feel free. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen on your Zoom call. And so please type in your questions, because we do want to make this as interactive as we possibly can. And we know that you'll have some very good thoughts to share with us as well. So please do so as the webinar goes on. But with that said, let's get right down to the topic at hand. And our first guest today, I'd like to welcome Heather Majewski. Heather, I'd ask you to join us, and because you can tell your story much better than I can. And so I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your story about your experiences with this situation. So welcome.
Thank you, Julie. So my name is Heather Majewski. I'm originally from Western New York. I recently this year moved to Hawaii. So that was an exciting move, still in a fairly rural area here. So as I said, I grew up in rural Western New York, and at a young age, I found a group of friends that was interested in alcohol, marijuana use, other drug use, and I wouldn't say I really succumbed to peer pressure. It just seemed like a fun thing to do, which unfortunately I believe is the case for a lot of youth in rural areas. So I did begin drinking probably around 17. And one of the most unfortunate situations that happened was I had broken up with my boyfriend. I was very distressed, and my friend had a Pepsi bottle full of vodka in his car, and I consumed probably half of the bottle. And we were on our way to Letchworth State Park, which is called the Grand Canyon of the East. So there's very large cliffs and things within that area. And I found myself on the other side of the fence, and I was stumbling and actually almost fell over the cliff. So that was an intense moment in my life, but I still continued to abuse alcohol. There was no social drinking for me. It was always a lot of drinking, which continued into my early 20s, where I would, again, with vodka, drink pretty much every night until I couldn't remember anything. So that was a challenging part of my life, but that was actually how I found my faith. So I'll get into that a little bit later. But really understanding the challenges for people in rural communities, that it's more of a challenging physical life to live in a rural community than it is in an urban setting, and also the need for friendship. So that's a lot of what rural communities are based around, is having that cohesive sense of community, and a lot of that does entail alcohol and then sometimes other drug use. So as a woman, especially, it's challenging because a lot of times in the rural communities, there's maintaining property as well as maintaining the home space.
Mhm.
So for women, that's usually, you'll have a glass of wine and sometimes a glass of wine turns into a bottle of wine. So that's definitely something challenging as a woman in rural communities, especially because women, especially probably more so than men, are um, we're personable beings. We like to have that relationship. We like to speak with each other. We like to have that community. And again, a lot of times that can revolve around consuming alcohol. So that was a lot of my late teens and then my 20s into my early 30s was all around um, alcohol. It was especially the holidays and things like that is especially challenging for that. Um,
How did you realize? When did you come to realize that maybe this was not that your behavior wasn't really helping you in the long run?
well, that happened in 2012. It was 2012. As I said, I was drinking more than any human being should, along with um, I was on opioids as well for some physical issues that I had. So I would start my day with more than what was prescribed in opiates. And also I was on methamphetamine prescribed, which I was also abusing. And then I would end the day with vodka. So that was going on for probably in conjunction, all three things for probably about 3 years. And I knew I was dying. And what happened was I had an encounter with God, and I wasn't looking for faith. I wasn't looking for God. It was just another day. I was laying on the couch picking at my hair. It was falling out, watching Law and Order Special Victims Unit with my bottle and my shot glass, and I heard, Heather, I'd like you to help unify my people. And I just ignored it. I was actually working in a mental health facility at the time, so I thought that I was
Hmm.
schizophrenic, hearing
Oh my
voices.
God. Yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
had an interesting experience after that where I just kind of stopped using opiates and I was on them for over 10 years and I had no withdrawal symptoms. And I just kind of stopped drinking. That was bizarre as well. And an interesting thing with that was I did start using marijuana, which was much harder for me to stop using. I actually struggled for probably about a year, stopping and starting and stopping and starting with marijuana. So the opiates, which people say are highly addictive, just kind of fell away along with the alcohol. And then I struggled with the marijuana. But yeah, that was the beginning of my faith, and it's
Well,
grown quite a bit.
well, first of all, it seems amazing that you said you were working, you had a job at the time that all this was going on, and the fact that you were able to function. Um, did any of your friends or colleagues ever say anything to you, or were they kind of doing the same types of things?
A lot of them, unfortunately, were doing the same types of things. I do remember again that one of the lowest parts of my life was when I had bought some morphine off the street and I took, I think, 40 milligrams and I ended up I smoked cigarettes at the time. I went outside and I vomited in the parking lot. And then I went back in and took another 40 milligrams. So it was just, that was just life at the time. So, and again, my coworkers were also, a lot of them were using and abusing narcotics and alcohol pretty regularly. So,
And you mentioned before that, and especially maybe for women in social settings, drinking, but I think probably for everybody in some regards, drinking is part of that socializing. What did you do did you find, was it like faith, church, or what did you do to replace that social interaction in your life?
well, initially a relationship with God, with my creator, that kind of changed that. And as far as social settings, like I learned to bring my own beverages because a lot of times that was the only option. It was either a highly sugared beverage or an alcoholic beverage. So that was one way that I was able to mitigate that. And another huge thing would be to set healthy boundaries as well and recognize that I don't have to explain myself to anyone. Because one of the things that I would hear when I stopped drinking was, well, how would you have any fun? You're not going to be fun anymore. So recognizing that a lot of times people may have issues themselves where even if it's just binge drinking on the weekends occasionally, they know that alcohol is not healthy for them. And instead of looking internally, it's much easier to look externally and point the finger and say there's something wrong with you not drinking, instead of saying, well, maybe I also have an issue with this that I should address. So that's something that was huge. And then initially, like the shame and guilt was huge because I had done things and said things and been in scenarios while I was under the influence that I never would have done. So dealing with shame and guilt is huge
Mm.
for people. And again, that's where community comes in. That's why we're finding a sober community, whether it's in a church or whether it's an online group, something like that is so important. And the difference between shame and guilt, I find this fascinating, is that guilt is I've done something wrong, and shame is there's something wrong with me, right?
Mm.
Which can come a lot with alcohol use disorder because if my friend can just have one or two drinks, why can't I? That there must be something fundamentally wrong with me. But in the Bible, it says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So again, those mantras are a great way to remind myself who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing here.
Did you do this all on your own, or did you have a counselor at any point or someone who was working with you?
Initially, I did it mostly on my own. So I would seek out different organizations and different ways to practice calming my mind. One of the largest aspects of overcoming those sort of things are learning to be uncomfortable. Because I found in my situation, and then a lot of people that I've counseled with, that being uncomfortable is usually the trigger, whatever it is, whether it's being in a family situation that's uncomfortable, whether it's having a job that when you get home it's uncomfortable, any of those kind of situations, finding a way to be okay being uncomfortable was paramount for me. And again, that's not anything that anyone else can do for me. That's something that I had to do myself. And that was the biggest turning point, was to kind of peel away the darkness that I had worn around like a jacket for so long, peeling that away and recognizing the beauty underneath that had always been there that I had done. And that's another thing as well. It's so easy to say that, well, if I hadn't been abused as a child, or if I had had a more loving family, or if I would have gotten into the school that I tried to get into, then my life wouldn't be like this. And then I wouldn't have this propensity to engage in this behavior. So really sitting with myself and recognizing that the things that I would label as unfortunate in my life are actually launching pads to be able to spring into the fullness of who I was created to be.
Well, that I want to go back to just being uncomfortable for just a second because that is, I think that's so interesting, and it seems like for you, and maybe now you observe in other people, it's that the alcohol or the drugs, whatever it might be, that's what deadens that discomfort for you. And
Sure.
remembering that you have to learn to be comfortable with discomfort in some ways is fascinating. Well, what's happened to Heather since then? So, I mean, I think it's quite remarkable that you did this and a lot of it on your own, but tell us about what's happened to you since then.
Oh, what's happened to me since then? So, I ended up losing my job in 2017 for unrelated reasons. And that was, again, that was quite a challenge. And because of the structures that I had built, I was able to be okay being uncomfortable. And again, I would credit God with all of that and also with the different tools that I have. I brought a few of them with me today. One of the easiest ones is breathing.
Hmm.
Taking and it's there's so many breathing exercises that can give you energy, that can calm you down, but one of the simplest for any kind of an anxious moment, it's a vagus reset breath, and it's so easy. And I'd invite everyone to do it real quick. It's a fast one, so just with a nice straight spine,
Good.
shoulders from the ears, deep breath in through the nose, and then a quick extra one, and then sigh out. That's it. So
Whoa. Okay.
reset the vagus nerve, which is responsible for that fight or flight feeling it'll kind of almost tangle up when we're in fight or flight. So just that is such a simple practice. And another one that I really love that might seem strange is screaming into a pillow. Because again, especially around these kind of times, it's
Uh-huh.
there's all of this angst that can get built up with all of the hustle and bustle that's around the holidays. So either finding a nice sturdy pillow and just let it out, or in your car, you can just let it out. And people might look at you weird, but who cares? Who cares? It's,
You're
just
going to feel better. You're
right.
We hear about that, and it's just, it's simple things like that and you mentioned this time of year because have there been times you mentioned losing your job? I mean, you've had some milestones where it might have been, I won't say easy, but you could have, relapsed into old behaviors, as it were. So, um, what advice would you give to people that, may be using alcohol or using drugs right now? But, a lot of people could be thinking, well, that's Heather, but she's an unusually strong person and she can do this, but I can't. I can't do that. What would you say to someone who came back at you with that kind of response?
Sure. Well, first of all, that's not true. I had several scenarios where I did have occurrences of alcohol misuse again. So there, and again, that goes right to the shame and guilt.
Mhm.
So I heard something the other day. I was listening to an audiobook, and one of the quotes was people that feel guilty are susceptible to being manipulated by people that don't feel guilty. So it's really important to kind of grab that guilt and throw it in the garbage immediately,
Mhm.
because forgiving myself for bad choices, it was the only way that I was able to get out of that that muck that I had found myself in. So I guess that's a big thing. And again, find your focus point where it's something that can help you when you feel uncomfortable. Maybe that breath is good. Maybe excusing yourself from whatever community setting it is for a moment or for the remainder of the day. That's okay. Again, there's no need to explain myself to anybody. I can just say, I'm not comfortable right now. I'm going to go. I don't have to disclose my whole life story about how I struggled with this or that. I just
Uh-huh.
excuse myself. And another great thing that they've come out with in the past few years is little fidget things. So this is a little ring that like massages my finger up and down. So
Oh,
I can find this probably online where you can find everything. So just something to kind of keep me in the moment because right now I'm not having a drink. So I
mhm.
can certainly think about in the past when I did have a drink or in the future when I might have a drink. But right now I'm not having a drink. So something that's physical, maybe a rock, maybe some sort of a fidget thing can help to center this moment. And also the sense of smell is the only sense that goes directly to the brain. So carrying around your favorite essential oil, and again, excusing yourself, taking a nice deep breath of whatever your favorite scent is, brings you into this moment. And in this moment, 9 times out of 10, you're okay. You just
Hmm.
believe you're not for a second. So
That the challenge, and those are great tips and tools to stay in that present moment because that's can be, I think, for all of us, sometimes very challenging. Well, don't go away, Heather. We're going to bring in our next guest right now. This is Dr. Pravesh Sharma, who's with the Mayo Clinic. And Dr. Sharma, welcome. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. Again, Doctor, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the program that you're working on, which is very much focused on women and rural women and their challenges. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about
Can
this program.
you see my slide properly?
Yes, looks great.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. My name is Pravesh Sharma, and I am an associate professor of psychiatry and psychology at Mayo Clinic Health System. My area of expertise is substance use disorder, and I use um, unique ways to help connect patients to treatment. One of those is community engagement aspect of it, which means it's collaborating with stakeholders such as Rural Mind, National Grange, and other faith leaders in the area, schools, libraries. So I connect with communities a lot. At the same time, I also collaborate with a lot of engineers to work on innovative approaches, mostly digital, so that I can connect patients with treatment and prevention strategies. So today we are going to talk about how can we empower women to engage in patient-centered alcohol research. Now, somebody asked me the other day that, Dr. Sharma, your presentation includes research. Why does it matter to me? I am not looking to get into research. Why should I listen to this topic? So I told them that engaging in research is equally important as getting a treatment. As Heather was telling her story, as you can imagine, every person has a unique experiences in their life. No two people are the same, right? The same goes with no two genders are the same. No two subpopulation is the same. What I mean to say is the needs for rural population is completely different than urban population. The needs for females are different than males. The needs for people in US is completely different than people living in Norway. So that's why to fully understand what things work and not work, we need to involve people in research. And once you get into research, the researchers are able to identify the things that work and not. And that is why the new swing in mental health and drug abuse research is to involve patients as much as possible in clinical trials so that we can able to understand uh, what what things work for them and what not. Now, traditionally speaking, if you look and see about 20 years ago, the involvement of women in research was extremely low. There was a time when women were not even in the research at all. And even if they were involved in the research, a lot of the papers, they would not publish the outcome data on women. So most of the time, we did not even know what kind of medications that generally work for women or what kind of treatment have side effects for women. So that's why having and involving women in research is extremely. Now, these are our partners that I generally work with, which includes Rural Minds, National Grange, Mayo Clinic Connect, National Network for Depression Centers, Wisconsin Women Health Organization, faith leaders in my community, people with family members and persons with lived experience, and several healthcare professionals from different hospitals. So my project that I'm going to talk about slightly later towards in the session is called Women Wise. And the project lead is myself. My other person who's leading is Dr. Christy Patton. Our team member, Brianna Tranby, Audrey, and Heather was part of our project as well and was one of the representatives from Rural Minds. So how did all this start? So we were thinking about the strategies, one or another, which works the best for women, right? And this is called as comparative effectiveness research, a big name, but it means nothing but comparing two different modalities that work the best, right? And that the fancy name is CER. And when we were deciding this and we were working on this, we thought about recruiting women. And when we were trying to recruit women, it was extremely hard from the community because they were afraid, number one, to join any clinical trial. If you listen to the word clinical trial, people just get afraid. Oh my gosh, what is it? You know, so people have less education about clinical trials. They were not sure about why do we need to get involved in clinical trials. So we decide of getting into this project called Women Wise, where we educated women of our community, which included approximately already 80 people and women in our local community get educated about clinical trials and what alcohol misuse mean, especially in context of women. So these were the two main goals for this project, not the research, but more about education and training of women in regards to clinical trials. So we applied this application to Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute. That is a leading funder for patient-centered research and in the United States. And so we applied for this funding and we got the funding. So what is alcohol? As Heather mentioned briefly, that alcohol produces feeling of euphoria, inhibits your inhibition, and it's a distilled fermented drink that was discovered several thousand years ago, right? It affects a specific area of the brain that increases the dopamine level in the brain. And whenever the dopamine level rises in the brain, that gives the feeling of pleasure and reward. And that's where it targets, right? And what happens is that over the course of time, that becomes a new circuit in your brain. So every time you drink, you get a reward. And if you don't drink, you get craving for reward. And that's what that craving means. And people who use excessive amount of alcohol, they end up developing a disorder called alcohol use disorder. What are the effects of alcohol? Everyone who uses alcohol is at a risk of developing health problems. No amount of alcohol is safe for body. Any amount of alcohol you use has an adverse effect on your body, and it is considered a carcinogen, which means that it can raise the risk of having cancer in the body. Females and male body are different in ways how they metabolize alcohol. And see, that's the reason why we need specific research in women, because they do not tolerate and they do not metabolize alcohol similar to what males do. Females have generally less weight and less water compared to males. They have different amount of alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme that metabolizes alcohol in your body. So generally what happens is that the same amount of alcohol has different effects in your body or different blood level of alcohol in you compared to males. And that's why the alcohol has different effects in males and women. So the effect of alcohol, as you can see, as you drink alcohol, it affects your gut. It also affects your liver. And when it affects it, it produces inflammatory compounds. These compounds go and crosses your blood-brain barrier, which is a barrier between blood and alcohol and brain. So it crosses that brain blood barrier and affects various neurons and cause neurodegeneration, and it can affect the development of new neurons. As a result, it causes compulsive drinking, it causes craving, and it causes relapse. Alcohol use actually is increasing among women compared to male. As you can see, in 1900, male to female consumption was 3:1. But in 2010, the male to female consumption is 1:1, which means that alcohol use among females have gone up while the male consumption has remained steady. As you can see, the data from another group, which means that there has been 6% increase among women, but there has been decline in annual use by 2% among men. If you look in binge drinking, 14% higher among women and 0.5% less among males. And the Cancer Society has mentioned that 7 to 10% increase in breast cancer risk associated with 10-gram increase or 10-gram consumption of alcohol daily among women. As you can see here in this graph, alcohol use has been getting more favorable and more acceptable among women. And family, friends, social media can influence how much alcohol you drink. Social pressure that Heather was talking about is also one of the reasons why it is getting acceptable in social settings. And confirming firm boundaries in social settings is also important. If you go in a setting where alcohol is served, make sure that you are okay to say that, no, I don't drink alcohol. And you do not have to give a reason why you don't want to drink alcohol. If these are your friends, they will understand it. A lot of time, I don't drink alcohol. So when I go to in a setting where alcohol is served, I just say I don't drink alcohol. And that's it. I don't have to tell them the reason why I'm not drinking. My past is my past. If I don't want to drink, I don't want to drink. What are the barriers for treatment? Most common one is financial, racial, and cultural factors. Stigma is one of the major issues when treating alcohol use disorders or alcohol misuse. Fewer treatment options are available for women. And you can imagine in your community how many totally designed treatment facility for women are available. You can find easily for men, or you can find for men and women, but it's hard to find anything only designed for women. Hardly. I don't know any that are around in my area when I practice. Beliefs around alcohol are different. Every family, every person have their different beliefs about alcohol. That also affects if you are going to take treatment or not. What are the possible clinical solutions? Share easy to understand information. This is about the clinicians. Increase screening for depression, anxiety, and trauma. Start carrying conversation that help women to feel safe in clinical setting. What are the research solution? And I talked about this slide way earlier in my presentation. It's important that women are represented in research, because if women are not represented, then we don't have enough treatment already available. So we want to know what works and what does not work in women. And it's also important to understand the comparative effectiveness. If X works better compared to Y, or is Y work better than X? So we want to understand the comparison between two modalities so that we can provide a better options to our patients. And why community partners are needed. Partners like Rural Minds, National Branch, and other people that I work with, they are important mouthpiece for the society. Like, for example, it is very difficult for me to reach an audience of about 100 people, right? Even though I work in one of the largest healthcare systems, but still, it's hard to get people. I can easily get clinicians, medical students, therapists, but it's hard to get people. And making collaborations with Rural Minds or National Branch, it's important that I can reach out to them and they can reach out to you so that we can provide this ongoing knowledge sharing between community and healthcare providers. So that's why it's important to get engaged with community partners so that the information can flow easily with less stigmatization and easy caring for people with alcohol use disorders. When we do research, we do community engagement research. What that means is that community is involved in every aspect of our research, which means is not just when I'm doing research recruitment, I just directly go to Rural Minds or National Branch to help me get participants. No, they are involved in every process. They're involved in planning of the research, you know, generating the research ideas and how to gather data, how to recruit participants, and they can offer unique insights on the results that we find, and also dissemination of the research finding. I can sit in my office and do research all day, but if that findings are not going back to the community, it beats the purpose. So having a community partner is really important in dissemination of the research findings. So stakeholders are involved in co-learning, partnerships, and reciprocal relationships. So quickly, thinking that we may not have enough time, I just want to tell you quickly what our program is about. So what happened is that our program was divided into several community advisory board, in which Heather was also one of the members. So we first trained the stakeholders, which means that I, myself and my team educated people of community advisory board, including Heather, about what does alcohol misuse means and what does research, and there were some slides that I quickly skipped. What about the research methodologies are, what are different kind of research are, how to build a research study. So all this training our community advisory board member received. And once they received this training, then they build a curriculum. That is very unique in this study. They just were not the silent listeners of this education. They themselves built this curriculum. And once they built this curriculum, they educated the community themselves. So Heather and other stakeholders, they went down in the community and educated people about what alcohol misuse means and what is the importance of research. And each of these members then participated in generating ideas or clinical questions that they would like us to answer in future. Some people said, okay, doc, I want to study if therapy works better compared to medication, or is therapy and medication works better than yoga, or if I do yoga and do a jump in minus 10-degree water, something like that. So they came up with all these ideas, and they were unique ideas that they came up with. And once we got all this data, we will be presenting it in somewhere in May in a large setup in Mayo Clinic where about 100 people are invited. And if you are available, you please feel free to join in, and I'll be happy to share the link to Rural Minds and National Branch. And you are more than welcome to come and listen what people identify through that. And our ultimate aim is to expand Women Wise and have people involved in clinical trial and clinical research.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sharma. This is just fascinating. I've learned so many things this afternoon that I don't think I realized when it comes to the connection between alcohol and other diseases like cancer, for example. But talk a little bit for just a minute here, because I know we're going to lose you in a couple of minutes here, but talk a little bit about what your vision is for the research moving forward. once you present, you're presenting in May, I believe you said. So what would be the next steps that you'd love to see come to fruition?
Yeah, so in regards to this project, whatever we learned in last 2 years after talking to community members, and gosh, we've talked to a lot of people over the last several months and couple of years, and thanks to you all and thanks to our partners. And the end result will be the summary of all the barriers that these people experience, how we can solve them. And it's not coming from me, it's coming from people, how they
Mhm.
would like it to be solved, and what are the important questions they want researchers to answer. And all that summary will be presented in May at Rochester, and I'll be happy to share the link to you all when that's ready. And that's what we are going to present.
It sounds fascinating. You mentioned barriers. What in from the research you've done before and the listening that you've done with your committee members, what are the barriers that maybe are unique to rural areas?
So the barrier that are unique to rural area in context of women is mostly childcare
Really?
and transportation. These were the top two that came up again and again, again and again. That somebody who is working in the mornings and in the evening they come home and they want to seek help, but they can't because they are with their family, right? They cannot leave their kids to participate in a clinical trial, or they are living out in area where the last bus is about at 5 p.m. They cannot travel. They only have one car. If they take that for a clinical trial or services or getting a treatment, then other family members have no way to move around. So all these barriers are important. Another major theme that came up was stigma. Uh, Knowing and understanding that rural area people know one another, right? They know by their names. They know who they are. So if somebody goes out into seeking help, all of a sudden they are exposing themselves to eyes and stigma and whatnot. So all those things are coming up quite frequently in our interaction with the community members.
Heather, if you'll join us, please. So we join the discussion here. Dr. Sharma, we've been talking a little bit about stigma. Did you experience any of this? Um, and did you have any concerns about what other people thought of you, I guess, when you were dealing with your own particular challenges?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, there was the thing with fun. How can you have fun? How can you be fun without alcohol? And again, the stigma that there must be something wrong with me is it's really a bizarre thing because it is a it's a disorder that's a neurochemical biological disorder, and people are shamed for it way too often. But you would never, like, if I went to a party and said, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I can't have any cake, I have diabetes," nobody would be like, "Oh, come on, you can have some cake." But with
Mm.
alcohol, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, you can just have one drink." So it's interesting to navigate that. And I think that the work that Dr. Sharma is doing and that we're doing together here is going to alleviate some of that pressure just by speaking about it. And again, like Dr. Sharma said, if those are your friends, then they won't hassle you for that. So if that does occur, my suggestion would be get new friends.
Yeah, very, very possibly. We're talking a little bit about the challenges that are unique to rural. What are the challenges and what are the barriers that are unique to women? I'll ask you both this question.
Sure, Dr. Sharma, you can go
Yeah.
first.
So as I mentioned earlier, the challenges in general for any female who's in a household is pressure. I mean, males can go and go anywhere they want, anytime, but we still live in a society where women is a glue to a family. If a woman is missing in the house, kids are screaming, husband is screaming, and I tell you, I hear it so many times that women are not able to leave their houses for their own mental health, right? and
Hmm.
often time for drug and alcohol use treatment. Secondly, I would say is that in urban population, like for example, if I work out in East earlier for my training, you can easily find a support group that are solely for women. You can easily find groups that are for women oriented. You can find groups and treatment centers that are solely focused on women, but it's hard to find in rural areas. And I think that also adds to availability of resources and barriers in seeking treatment and also stigma.
Heather, do you have the thought?
Yes, yeah, I would agree with everything that Dr. Sharma said. And going back to one of my main understandings with alcohol use disorder and other those kind of misuse disorders is a lack of community or good community. Like I said, when I said find a new friend group, a lot of times in the rural community, that's not really possible because of whatever the limitations are. And an awesome, amazing solution to that is online communities. I think that will once all of those things open up, that could be a huge avenue for women to find those online communities to be able to share and to get the support that they need. So, but yeah, as women, of course, it's maintaining the house, like Dr. Sharma said, it's not usually even available for most women to take time out of their schedule to maintain themselves. And I just think about the air mask on the airplane. You have to put it on yourself before you put it on your children or anyone else. So if I'm not taking care of myself well, I'm not going to take care of my family and my household well. So just reminding ourselves that we are important, I think, is really necessary.
That's a very good. Absolutely. Dr. Sharma, I'll start with you and let us know how much time you have. But telehealth, mobile clinics, types of thing, are these something that are going to be helpful to women in rural communities as we move forward when they're dealing with alcohol and substance abuse disorders?
Yes, I believe digital health will play a big role in coming years. And the only one thing that came out of COVID-19, which was positive, I would say telehealth, because it has become a standard of care in a lot of clinical settings now. I do a lot of research in building digital platforms that can easily reach to women. We are currently working on a program where we are using Facebook as one of the ways to connecting women, because that is something that social media is something that almost everybody uses these days. And
Mhm.
one thing with substance use disorder is peer support. Peers can sometimes be deviant peers, but at the same time, they are very helpful in substance use disorders. Seeking support, listening to other people's story, getting that support is very critical. So with the use of social media and telehealth and digital platforms, what we are trying to do is connecting the community together and trying to find ways how we can deliver medications, provide treatment virtually without having to patient travel 50, 60, or sometimes 100 miles.
Mhm. Mhm. So, so that is one good way to break down that barrier. Heather, did you participate, and did support groups even exist back when you were initially dealing with your alcohol use disorder? Did you find any kindred spirits that you were able to talk to and maybe gain strength from or give strength to?
Yes, I did, but it was in the tail end. So, like I said in the beginning, it was me and God. So, me and Jesus did the thing, and then I was connected with a bunch of local groups, both online and in-person groups, where I was able to share, and then also I was able to receive the fellowship and the camaraderie, and I met some people that had been sober for decades. So just to see that transformation, and then to watch new people, how again they would take off that sticky, gross part that they've been carrying around and just reveal the beauty underneath, it was quite a blessing.
For people who are dealing with substance abuse disorder right now, so women who are dealing with this situation, I'll ask both of you, is there one piece of advice that you would give somebody, or suggestion on something that might help them right now? Dr.
So
Sharma, you want to
I'll
start?
take this question quickly and then I'll head out. I think the most important thing is finding connections around you and thinking that you're not alone. It's sometimes it feels like you're isolated, and it's because of this illness and because of this disease that makes you feel this way. But there are people who are ready to help. For example, Heather, for example, Rural Minds, for example, Nash and Grange. There are community uh, um, people who are there to help you and hold your hands and provide you encouragement as much as possible.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Doctor, and good luck with your research, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you as you get ready to present the information in May. So
Thank you. Bye-bye.
thank you for sharing that information today. And Heather, is that, what would you say? What would you say to someone who's struggling right now?
I would say the same thing, that it's important to get that connection and um, have some kind of a community. So that's something that I'm very passionate about. And my husband actually just launched my website this morning. So
Okay.
yep.
And what's the goal of your website? Tell us a little bit about that.
So the goal of my website is to provide resources to help empower women, because we are our own expert on our life. So there's that, and freedom as well, just because issues like alcohol use disorder, drug use disorder can be such a bondage. So finding that sense of freedom, that childlike freedom, is just, I'm so passionate about that, and sharing tools that I've used that worked for me and that might not have worked for me but might work for you is just an open dialogue is so important, that a compassionate listening ear, a non-judgmental compassionate listening ear. So yeah.
It's fascinating that you say that, because, it's something that we've said at Rural Minds so often, is it's that, that judgmental voice, or, non-judgmental voice, someone that can listen
Mhm.
without judgment and with compassion, as you say. And what's interesting is I think this applies over many of the different types of mental health challenges that we've been talking about on this webinar series now for a few years. So where do people find you um
So you
online?
can find me on Facebook just with my name, and then also my website is quantumwellness.health.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that would launch there, and then you can send an email to me from there, and we can connect, and I can help provide any. I was from, again, Western New York, so I still have connections there with a lot of in-person resources, and I'm working to build new connections and new communities here in Hawaii on the Big Island.
A little bit different geography than you were.
A little bit different geography, yeah, but again, there's all different walks of life where people are struggling with alcohol use disorders.
Well, and we forget about the fact that there are areas in Hawaii that are rural.
Oh, absolutely. The Big Island, especially. Like the majority of people think of Oahu, where Honolulu is, but on the Big Island, it's mostly rural communities with coffee farmers, avocado farmers, different vegetable fruit farmers. So,
Well, and we're getting close here, but as we end this portion of our program, we are in the holiday season now. We're in the thick of it. Um, any suggestions, any advice? I know you and Dr. Sharma have both done a good job of telling us, it's okay to say I'm not having a drink today, but what do you do to those people that go, as you were saying before, you can have just one, it's not going to hurt you. What do you how can someone gracefully remove themselves from that situation?
That's a great question, Julie. So sometimes in certain situations, we're unable to remove ourselves from the situation. We're unable to excuse ourselves because of transportation, because that's just where we have to be. So again, remembering that I have to take care of myself first, and I don't have to explain myself to anyone, and that if that people are allowed to get upset about it. People are allowed to get upset at my unwillingness to participate in derogatory comments or things like that. So, and empowerment. It's remembering that you are a sovereign being and that you're allowed to do things differently and say things differently than everybody else in the room. If
Mhm.
everybody else in the room is behaving a certain way and I choose to behave differently, that's okay. So, and then remembering, again, the little tricks we can do with the little breathing. There's lots of different breathing techniques. Again, if you forget your little fidget ring or whatever, there's always the breath. That was the first gift that God ever gave to humans, was the breath. So just even taking nice slow breaths and centering myself, I can prevent me from saying something or doing something that I may regret later, even with a sober mind.
That's a very good point. That is absolutely, and it's, you can still love somebody and not have a drink with them. So
True.
there's other ways to express our affection and our love. Well, can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us today. I think, again, one of the things that we've learned throughout these webinars is how very powerful it is when one person opens up and says, I've had these challenges, and the fact that you're putting yourself out there for other people to help other people is awesome. So we really appreciate your time and your courage to share your good information with us today. As we close off this webinar today, a couple of important reminders for folks. First of all, we have a survey that will pop up at the end. So, as I always mention, this is how we get the subject matter for our upcoming webinar. So please take time, answer the survey. Um, Let us know what you think because we would greatly appreciate that. And as we've mentioned on a couple of occasions, it is the holiday season. It is the season of giving. And all of the good folks at Rural Minds, we do have a holiday campaign this year called Stronger Together. And we have an anonymous donor who has agreed to match any contributions. So if you have when you're thinking about your holiday giving for 2025, please, we would be more than grateful if you would keep Rural Minds in that on that list and under consideration. And I think we're actually going to end a couple of minutes. So we're giving you the gift of time. We're going to give you a couple minutes of your day back with our very sincere thanks, as always, to everyone who participated, who shared their questions and thoughts with us. And from all of us at Rural Minds, we wish you a very happy holiday season and a very healthy 2026. Thanks to our presenters and thanks to everyone who participated today.